The alley was dark, but not dark enough to hide the fear in her eyes. 3 shadows loomed over her, backing her against the brick wall where the streetlight couldn't reach. That's when he appeared, a man with tired eyes and calloused hands, carrying nothing but grocery bags and the weight of raising 2 children alone. "Move. Now," he said, his voice quiet but leaving no room for argument. What happened next would change both their lives forever. If you're moved by stories of everyday heroes and unexpected courage, hit that like button and subscribe to see more real stories that remind us humanity still exists in this broken world. Sarah Winters clutched her purse tighter against her chest, cursing herself for taking the shortcut through the alley behind Parkview Apartments. She'd done it 100 times before, a simple 5-minute walk that saved her 15 minutes on her commute home. But tonight, the familiar passage felt different. She first noticed the footsteps when she was halfway through, too casual, too measured. When she quickened her pace, they did too. When she slowed, they matched. Her heart hammered against her ribs as she reached for her phone, only to remember its battery had died hours ago. "Hey there, pretty lady. Where you rushing off to?" The voice came from ahead of her, where a figure now blocked the exit to the street. 2 more appeared behind her, and Sarah felt her throat constrict. "I'm just heading home," she managed, her voice barely above a whisper. "Maybe we can walk you," said the tallest one, moving closer. The streetlight caught the glint of something metallic in his hand. "Pretty girl like you shouldn't be alone at night." Sarah backed up until she felt the cold brick wall against her spine. The men formed a half-circle around her, close enough that she could smell cigarettes and something stronger on their breath. "Please," she said, "I don't have much money." The tall one laughed. "Who said anything about money?" Daniel Reeves was exhausted. The double shift at the construction site had left his muscles aching, but the extra hours meant he could afford the science camp his daughter Emma had been talking about for months. At 38, being a single father to 2 kids wasn't what he'd planned, but after Melissa's death 3 years ago, plans had become luxuries he couldn't afford. He'd just finished grocery shopping, the kids were with his sister tonight, and was taking the alley shortcut to save his tired legs a few extra blocks. That's when he heard it, a woman's voice, tight with fear, and male laughter that made the hair on his neck stand up. Daniel rounded the corner and saw them, 3 men surrounding a woman pressed against the wall. Something inside him shifted. Not anger, exactly, but a cold clarity. He'd spent 3 years teaching his daughter that the world could be safe for her. That men should protect, not prey. He set his grocery bags down quietly. "Move. Now." The words left his mouth before he'd fully formed a plan. They were quiet but carried through the alley like thunder. The men turned, surprised by the interruption. The tallest one, clearly the leader, sized Daniel up with a smirk. "Mind your business, old man. Keep walking." Daniel didn't move. "The lady is my business. And I'm not walking anywhere until she does, safely." The woman, young, maybe mid-20s, looked at him with wide, disbelieving eyes. There was a moment when Daniel thought about his kids, about what would happen to them if this went badly. But some lines couldn't be uncrossed. 3 against 1, said the second man, shorter but broader than the leader. "Those aren't good odds." Daniel smiled slightly. "For you?" "No, they're not." Sarah couldn't believe what she was seeing. The man who'd appeared seemed ordinary in every way, average height, work clothes, the beginning of gray at his temples. He wasn't particularly muscular or imposing. But something in his stance, in the absolute certainty of his voice, made her attackers hesitate. "Last chance," the tall one said, turning the knife in his hand so it caught the light. "Walk away." The stranger didn't flinch. "I've got 2 children waiting for me at home. I'm not looking for trouble. But I'm also not leaving her here with you. So you've got a choice to make." The tall one lunged forward suddenly, knife extended. What happened next was so fast Sarah could barely process it. The stranger sidestepped with surprising agility, caught the attacker's wrist, and in one fluid motion, had him face first against the wall, arm twisted behind his back. The knife clattered to the ground. 15 years in construction teaches you a thing or two about leverage, the man said calmly, though Sarah could see the strain in his face. Now, your friends are going to back up and let the lady walk out of here. Then I'll let you go, and we can all forget this happened. The other two men exchanged glances, clearly recalculating their odds. She's not worth it, muttered the shorter one, backing away. Go, the stranger told Sarah, still holding the leader immobilized. Straight out to the main street. Don't run, but don't look back. Sarah hesitated. What about you? I'll be fine. Go. She took a few steps, then stopped. I can't just leave you. Trust me, he said, meeting her eyes. Please. Something in his gaze convinced her. She walked quickly toward the street, expecting at any moment to hear a struggle, a shout, something to indicate the situation had escalated. But there was nothing but the sound of her own footsteps. When she reached the street, she turned back, unable to help herself. The alley was empty except for the stranger, who was calmly picking up his grocery bags. Of the three men, there was no sign. Daniel's hands were shaking as he gathered his groceries. The adrenaline was wearing off, leaving him lightheaded. He'd been lucky, incredibly lucky. After he'd let the leader go, the man had cursed him but backed away, unwilling to risk further humiliation in front of his friends. They'd slunk off into the darkness, throwing threats over their shoulders that Daniel pretended not to hear. He straightened up with his bags and found the woman waiting at the alley entrance. You shouldn't have waited, he said, approaching her. And you shouldn't have intervened, she replied. But I'm very glad you did. Her voice broke slightly on the last words. Under the streetlight, Daniel could see her clearly for the first time, dark hair pulled back in a practical ponytail, intelligent eyes still wide with the remnants of fear, professional clothes suggesting she was coming from an office job. I'm Sarah, she said, extending her hand. Daniel. He shifted his grocery bags to shake her hand. Can I walk you home? Just to be safe. She nodded gratefully. It's not far. Just a few blocks. They walked in silence for a minute, both processing what had just happened. You have children? She finally asked. Daniel nodded. Emma's 10. Jacob's 7. They're lucky to have you. He laughed softly. Most days I feel like I'm failing them spectacularly. After what I just saw. I doubt that very much. They reached a small apartment building, and Sarah stopped. This is me. She hesitated. Would you like to come up for coffee? It's the least I can offer. Daniel glanced at his watch. I should get home. My sister's watching the kids, but... Of course, Sarah said quickly. I understand. Another time, maybe? The word surprised them both. Daniel hadn't meant to say them aloud, hadn't even known he was thinking them until they were out. Sarah smiled, the first real smile he'd seen from her. I'd like that. 3 months later, Sarah sat on a park bench watching Daniel push Emma on the swings while Jacob raced around the playground with boundless energy. She still thought about that night in the alley, how different things might have been if Daniel hadn't appeared when he did. Their relationship had developed slowly, cautiously. Coffee had led to dinner, dinner to weekend outings with the kids. Sarah had learned that Daniel had been a contractor before his wife died of cancer, that he'd scaled back to construction work with more predictable hours so he could be there for his children. She'd told him about her job as a paralegal, her dreams of law school someday, her own family 3 states away. Penny for your thoughts, Daniel said, sitting beside her as the children played. I was just thinking about how we met, Sarah replied. Not exactly a romantic story to tell the grandkids. Daniel laughed. I don't know. I think there's something to be said for meeting someone when they're showing their true character. Sarah leaned against his shoulder. You know what scares me sometimes? If you'd been 5 minutes earlier or later. But I wasn't, he said simply. I was right where I needed to be. Emma ran over, her face flushed with excitement. Dad! Sarah! Watch me go down the big slide. They both waved and watched as she climbed the ladder. They're amazing kids, Sarah said softly. They like you, Daniel replied. Jacob asked me yesterday if you were going to be his new mom. Sarah's breath caught. What did you tell him? Daniel turned to face her. I told him that some of the best things in life come from the most unexpected places, and that we should be open to whatever happens next. Sarah smiled and took his hand. That sounds like good advice for all of us. As they sat together watching the children play, Sarah thought about courage, not just the dramatic kind that Daniel had shown that night in the alley, but the quiet kind that allowed a grieving man to open his heart again, that pushed a frightened woman to trust after trauma, that helped two children welcome someone new into their carefully balanced world. Sometimes the bravest thing wasn't facing down danger, but simply choosing to move forward, one uncertain step at a time. Years later, when people asked how they met, Daniel and Sarah would exchange a look, deciding silently how much of the story to tell. Sometimes they shared the full version, the dark alley, the confrontation, the quiet words that had changed everything, move. Now. Other times, they simply said they'd met by chance, that Daniel had helped Sarah out of a difficult situation, that sometimes the right person appears exactly when you need them most. What they always emphasized, especially to Emma and Jacob as they grew, was that courage wasn't about being fearless. It was about being afraid and acting anyway. It was about standing up when it would be easier to walk away. It was about recognizing that sometimes, the most important thing you can do is simply be present when someone else is in need. And in a world that often seemed designed to keep people apart, that was a lesson worth remembering. If this story touched your heart, please hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more stories that celebrate everyday heroes and the unexpected connections that change our lives. Remember, sometimes the most powerful acts of courage aren't grand gestures, but simple moments of standing up for what's right, even when no one is watching. Share your thoughts in the comments below, and tell us about a time when someone unexpected stepped into your life at just the right moment.